Okay, tell us about, like, okay, Christine, how old are you?
28.
Okay, what's happened in the last 28 years of your life? The highlights.
The highlights. Oh, I guess our vacations and well, there was a lot of tragedy in my life, you know, because
Well, you know what? Tell us about your family origin.
yeah, because my dad was only 58 years old and he had cancer, and I was pregnant with Anne-Marie and I couldn't go home to see him. The doctor said I couldn't travel, and I called home and they say, oh, you know, any day now. He was really, really sick. So at those days, you had to have them baptized within like 1 or 2 weeks in the Catholic Church. That was like a rule.
This was with Anne-Marie the Father?
No, this was with, this was Anne-Marie, yeah. Okay. So, but anyway, when I was in the hospital, I called this Christian Catholic store, and I said, I have a father who's dying of cancer. Can you suggest a gift that I could send him for Christmas? Because Christmas is there. And they suggested this prayer book. It had a crucifix on one side, and on the other side was a prayer before the cross, okay? So they said, we'll send it for you, and then we'll just charge you for the gift and for the postage and everything. And I said, oh, that'll be wonderful. So when I came home, we had the christening the next week, and I was very upset because Ed's brother called and said he was coming with his 5 kids, and
which brother was that?
his oldest brother.
His name?
Thomas. They have 8 kids now. But here I was, I just had a section. I had 3 kids. My dad is dying of cancer, and I didn't want to have a big celebration or anything. So anyway, they came, and then we went home, and I knew my dad was really bad. He was over 200 pounds, and when he died, he only weighed 60 pounds.
What kind of cancer?
Of the stomach. He was like a living skeleton. He didn't look like himself. He was all yellow. And I peeked around, the nurses were changing his dressing, and I peeked around the curtain, and I could see him, and that kind of broke the shock, because I think if I just went in and saw him, I would die. But anyway, and the nurse said, oh, are you the nurse?
When did you get to see him?
Huh?
How did you get to see him? I thought you couldn't travel to see him.
After I had the baby, I had him baptized, baptism. But the nurse said, oh, you're the nurse. He's been waiting for you to come home to die. So I went in, and he said, oh, your mother said the baby's beautiful. Oh, I used to go in the morning, and my sister would watch the baby and the 2 kids, and then she would go in the afternoon. So the 3rd day I was there, he said, can you come back again at midnight and just stay till 3 o'clock in the morning? And I thought, that is a strange request, but, you know, whatever he wants, I'll do. So I came back at midnight, and he was really, really restless. And he couldn't move by himself because he was so thin. He had to, you know, I would turn him on his side, and I, you know, wet his lips. He couldn't take anything by mouth because the cancer had eaten away all his esophagus. He would actually drown if he took a glass of water or something. So then all of a sudden, so then he kept saying, the nurse came in and she said, I'm going down the kitchen, do you want something to eat? And I said, no. Come down with me, get something to eat. And I said, no, he's too restless, I can't leave him. So, you know, I just trying to make him comfortable. So he kept saying, what time is it? Because he just asked me to stay till 3. And, you know, and I told him what time it was. So then, right before 3, now my father was a very holy man. He said the rosary every day on his knees. And when he was laying there, and like I said, you had to help him move on his side, all of a sudden he rolled it up in bed by himself like this, and his hands are outstretched like this to the foot of the bed. And I know that he saw somebody. And I think it was probably either Mary or Jesus. And later he, was like praying, and then he just laid down, and I didn't know, but he died. My clock was 3 o'clock, and I said to the nurse, "Oh, I've got to leave." I thought he just fell asleep. I said, "I have a baby at home." And he told me just to stay till 3, and when I got home, the phone call was that he had died, so.
But he knew.
Yeah.
I
He
know.
knew, yeah, 3 o'clock.
That is something.
He died at 3.
Isn't there something special about 3 o'clock? Like, isn't that when
Well,
they
it's
say
just when Jesus died.
I know. Wow. I didn't know that part. I heard the other part of the story. Like he was kind of speaking in tongues.
And he would never ask, he would never ask anybody to do anything for him. And the fact that I looked so terrible, and I was so tired, and I had a baby, that he would ask me was very unusual, for him to ask me to do that, because that wasn't just like him,
How old were you when you
when I had
26.
That's pretty young.
Yeah.
And what about your mom?
Well, what about the gift you had given him?
Oh yes, so anyway, this gift, this prayer book, for Christmas, my brothers and my sisters gave him sweaters and boots, because see, everybody pretended, he pretended, I'm going to get better, and he said, take all the gifts home, I won't even open them, I'll open them when I get better, when I get home, I'll open up all the gifts and we'll look at them. But then they were really curious, because my gift was only about this big. And my mother said, well, this is really an unusual package. Let's just open this one and see what it is. And so it was this, it was gold, and it was like a book. And on one side it had a gold crucifix, and on the other side it was the prayer before crucifix. And you got plenary indulgence every time you said it. So anyway, and when I came, he had it on his stand. So I was really happy to see that. And but that was the only gift he opened, so that was like a miracle, because he didn't open anybody else's gift. And let's see. So then my mother, house burned down. That.
I have to ask a question. So your dad, he died in like December of what year? What that was?
60. He was 58.
She died really young too.
Yeah. But one thing I remember about him is he always took a lot of Tums. Always had heartburn. Stephen.
Okay, we're going in for a check on Monday.
So then then my mother took over the farm, and my brothers worked for her, and she paid them.
Okay, I'm sorry, you're Bernard
and Buddy.
Bernard and
Buddy took over the farm. Okay, so, and my brother Buddy lived next door, and their son Harold was going to be confirmed on Sunday, and they were going to have a big dinner, so everybody came over, and my sister and her 4 little children were over my mother's, and they were sitting on the couch like this, and black smoke was coming up from behind the couch. And so my mother opened up the basement door, and all this black smoke hit her in the face, and my sister ran through the house, got all her kids out, and when she got out, she realized the door was locked, my mother was in the house. And so then my brother put his fist through the glass door and opened the door and pulled her out. And they called the fire department, and of course the house burned to the ground because there was no fire hydrants, just a pond. And so they called me with Sunday afternoon. I was getting ready to go to a meeting, and they said, the house burned down, but your mother's all right. And then they called back later and said, The fire chief said she should go to the hospital and be checked, even though she seems all right. By the time they got to the hospital, she couldn't breathe. What happened was the black smoke that she inhaled prevented the oxygen from getting to her brain, and it destroys the part of her brain that controls your breathing, so she couldn't breathe. They put her on a ventilator. So the next day I jumped on a bus and stayed for 10 days. But they said all her insides were burned or scorched from the black smoke. And so after 10 days I said to the doctor, well, I have all my children and husband back in Virginia. I'm going to go home. And he said, well, that's fine. So I got home, 5 o'clock that morning, I got a phone call that she had died. And I think my sister told them to unplug. Because every time they unplugged it, she was dead.
Your sister what?
Gave him permission to unplug the ventilator, respirator.
Which sister?
Lily. She was the oldest.
Just for the record.
She never told me and I never asked her, but I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
But I
She
mean,
wasn't living. Yeah.
in a way.
That's for the best anyway.
And
All
so
you
did
can
this
do
for
is
the best.
to be.
Okay.
You have 2 brothers or 2
So then right after that, okay, the flood came.
Patsy.
The flood came and destroyed, after my brother got all his plants on the field, the flood came, everything was destroyed. So then I get a phone call in the afternoon. Edward comes home from school and says, Edward Jr. was a sophomore in high school, came home and said, a boy in my class hung himself last night. They announced in school. His mother and younger brother went to the grocery store. When they came home, they found him hanging in his room. But anyway, my brother called on the phone and he's sobbing and he said, I'm calling to say goodbye. I have a gun in my hand. I'm going to shoot myself. My brother.
Brother Buddy.
Is it true?
Because, no, he's called and said he's going to do that. He just lost my mother. He lost my father. He lost my mother. He lost everything on the farm from the flood. And then he got really possessive of his wife and 2 children. She couldn't go anywhere. She couldn't have any company, and she's real close to her family.
But he didn't kill himself.
No, well, I'll tell you.
Okay.
So he says, I'm going to kill myself. And I said, well, don't do that. We'll just pray, everything will be all right. No. Audrey's leaving me, and I have nothing to live for. I lost everything. And this went on for like 25 minutes. And we were having a Bible meeting at our house that night. There were all kinds of people. They were all different denominations. And so, anyway, Ed came home from work and I said, what should I do? Should we have our meeting or should I jump in the car and try to save him? It was like 8 hours away.
Wow, you feel helpless.
So anyway, this girl called me on the phone and she had a question about our Bible study. And I answered her question and she said, you sound very upset. What's the matter? And I said, well, maybe I'll share it tonight with the group. And she said, okay. So everybody came. We had our Bible study. I didn't say a word. I could just, I think I was just kept saying the Hail Mary over and over, wondering what's happening with my brother. And so finally, we always ended with Our Father. We held hands. Everybody got up to leave, and this girl said, Eleanor, when I talked to you earlier on the phone, and you were really upset, you said you were going to share something with us. And I said, well, I changed my mind. Well, I really think you should share it with us. So I told her about my brother, and she said, well, we'll all pray for your brother. So we said the Our Father, again, we prayed hand, we held hand with him, and I was really exhausted. I just laid on the bed with my clothes on. 5 o'clock in the morning, the phone rang, and it was my brother, and he said, something came over me last night, and I realized this is wrong, and there is hope, and I'm going to go to a counselor. And I said, well, we just had our Bible study. We prayed for you. He said, well, thank you, and thank your friends.
I can make something.
And So anyway,
Oh, was this your idea? Are you two doing Mario?
But I mean, don't you think it's neat to preserve for the next
I've
generation?
been wanting her to write
Our
this down.
kids, I have no idea about my grandparents. They'll never know this stuff unless we.
Chris didn't even know.
I don't know this
Oh,
stuff.
look at this
cute
cute
little kid here.
He's so sweet.
But see, what made it all the more real was Edward coming home and telling me that this kid had hung himself after talking to my brother.
Yeah.
You know, I talked to my brother for about 45 minutes on the phone while he's crying, and I'm thinking, oh, you know,
And Junior.
and you know, and then and Junior walks in the door, and you know, and I'm thinking,
After you talked to Buddy.
yeah, it was after
Oh,
I talked to
my
Buddy,
gosh.
because Buddy called me, I guess, in the afternoon, and we talked. It was on. I mean, I just kept saying to him, don't do it, don't do it. And he said, well, I have the gun right here, and he said, you've always been my favorite, and I wanted to say goodbye. He didn't call anybody else. And they all lived around him. And so he, but anyway, when Edward came home and said this kid hung himself, that made it all the more real to me that people do kill themselves, you know,
Yeah.
when they say they're gonna or they.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So what happened in his life? I mean, did it like bottom out there? Did it take off? And
well, they went to counseling and, you know,
Is
they
he still married
celebrated.
to her?
Oh yeah, they
And they
celebrated
went to farm.
the 25th anniversary, had a big celebration, and
so how'd they get by that year when all the crops were destroyed and they had no money? And
well, the Red Cross, I guess,
He gave him a trailer.
they gave him a trailer to live in. I don't know, maybe, I don't know if they got money from someplace or what, but I know they used to bring the meals down, the Red Cross used to bring in sandwiches for lunch. And the house was so bad that they had to have the fire truck come with the heavy hoses to clean out the mud off the walls in the house.
Did they live there now?
Oh yeah, no, in another house.
I did.
The family house, my grandparents' house, which is higher up on the hill. And,
Hey, how old were you when your mom died?
well, how old was I when I had you?
When your dad died, you were 26.
And
Oh,
she
so-
died before.
Oh,
after
no,
she died after.
she died about 3 or 4 years later. So,
Was it? As I remember her. I know, because I was old enough to remember. You met Grandma. I was thinking I was like 10. I was thinking I was like 9 or 10. And I'm 9 years older than Chris when she died.
I thought that grandma got
Or
you.
maybe even older.
well, she was probably like 64 or something like that. But I still have the pictures at home of the house burned down.
Yeah, you showed us
Did you
those
bring them?
from the paper.
I remember the smell. See, I remember going over there and the smell of it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, the burnout house.
After the flood.
Reeks and
I
stuff.
got it from here. I got it from here.
Oh, tell us the names of the grandparents and the great-grand. Yeah, your brothers and sisters. And the family tree.
Okay, there was Lillian, me, Patsy, Buddy, and Bernard.
5 kids and
5 kids.
And your parents' names?
My parents were Henry and Stella. And my mother never got along with my dad's parents, with the mother-in-law.
like
I mean, you know, pictures.
Can't send them that copy. Now, what was
Another beer.
mom's maiden name? What did you say?
Your mom's maiden name, yeah.
Oh, Ostrowski.
Now tell us about her thoughts about being Polish and all that.
did she immigrate?
Her parents came from Poland, and she was very ashamed of the fact because they used to call them hunkies. And,
what year? Did they
What year
come
was
over?
that?
oh, I don't know.
I mean, like.
You were born in 34.
But when we would be driving around and she'd point out in Wilkes-Barre, and, you know, like you'd see a first store or a Sterling Hotel, and she'd say they were all Jewish people, and she'd say, you know, my dad came over on the same boat with them, and he was a butcher, and they had like 6 boys and 3 girls, and all the sons were butchers. But it really upset her that her dad was a butcher, and all these other people that came over on the boat were all such big businessmen and owned all these big businesses in town. And so when she was in high school, she changed her name to Strauss and told everybody she was Jewish.
Your mother?
Because her parents didn't speak English, they spoke Polish. And that was something to be ashamed of at that time. You never invited
Polish
people over
chicks.
to your house.
In the
Because-
30s?
Huh?
This was the
30s?
30s then, you think? Or 19 what? 20s,
20s,
30s?
Well, I was born in 34.
So it was before that.
So the 20s.
18s to 20s? Or?
Well, she was always ashamed of the fact that, you know.
But she actually was the one who immigrated?
No, my grandparents.
Your grandparents.
But see, she was ashamed of them and couldn't understand why, you know, he became a butcher and all these other guys that came over on the same boat were couriers and owned big hotels and all the businesses in town. And
So your mother was born in America?
oh yeah, she was the first child,
First generation.
and she really resented the fact because we're going through Bush. But anyway, her job was to wash out the bloody aprons.
Let me tell
So she came from school.
you. Somebody's got to.
Because
No,
her
you're-
butcher.
Ed just told me that this morning.
What?
When I was cutting the ham, I was telling him my dad was a butcher for 10 years.
Oh.
He was saying that your family was butchers.
My grandfather was a butcher.
Did he have any missing fingers?
Yes, and they did have missing fingers, and I always wondered if they threw that meat away, you know, after,
What goes in a blood?
you know,
We
the
just
first,
ate it.
up to the first knuckle, you know. And see, my mother would never eat ground beef.
Now we know why.
Yes. If she ever came to your house, if you have anything with ground beef, she'd say, did you ground it yourself? Because we always, at home, we had a grinder, and we used to grind our own meat. And we'd always say, yeah, we ground it.
So then she said, let me see your hands.
Even if you didn't, right?
Hey, Mom, do you remember your grandparents?
Oh, yeah.
Talk about them. I've never heard you talk
That
about
was pretty good.
Well, they were, well, I mean, there's something I could,
them. They just speak
That
Polish?
that was a good yo-yo trick. I like that.
well, the only thing he ever said was hello and goodbye to them because they didn't speak English. But the only thing I remember about my grandfather that was my father's father on the farm, was he always had Hershey Kisses in his pocket. And every time you saw him, he'd call you over and give you a couple Hershey Kisses. And that was one of my old fond memories of him. And then he died. And they used to bury people from the house at the time. And I remember they had to
Used to
open
what?
the big living room.
Bury
and-
what?
Huh?
What'd you say they used to what?
They always buried people from the house. They didn't have funeral homes.
Oh, they laid them in the house, yeah.
You'd have the wake at the
Oh,
house.
the wake in the house.
But, and I remember they had to open up one of the big windows in the living room because the casket wouldn't fit through the door and get the casket out the
It was
window.
supposed to be a big man.
No, but it was just that they didn't make the doors big enough,
Oh.
I guess, or something like that. No, I don't think it was that big man.
So, like, when you grew up, what was, like, your schooling like and stuff like that?
Well, no, but the thing I resented was working, I had to come right home from school, work on the farm. And I remember this man, well, the seed men used to come to the house, come to the farm all the time, and to sell my dad seed, he'd order, 50 pounds or 200 pounds of this kind of seed and that kind of seed and this kind of seed. And I was working on the farm, probably, we used to have radishes, and you'd pick a bunch of radishes and put a string around them, and then they'd take them up and wash them and pack them. But anyway, this seed man, I never even knew that he knew I existed. But he came over to me, he said to me, "Do you ever smile?"
Oh.
And I realized for the first time that I was showing how I felt. And I couldn't believe that a man like that would pick up on that, because he was there to sell my dad's seeds. He had nothing to do with me. And, but anyway, it just made me stop and think that maybe I walk around with a frown on my face. So,
Who else does that?
but anyway, I really resented the fact that I had to hurry home. I couldn't do anything, any activities after school. Just had to come right home. And my dad, my mother was very tight with the money, but my dad, as a surprise, we always had to leave our shoes on the cellar steps, on the basement steps. And every morning we'd run to see, and he'd have a couple dimes and nickels in it to buy candy on our lunch hour. And my dad was very quiet, but he was a very good and holy person. My mother was just the opposite.
What was Sunday morning like for your mom?
Huh?
Sunday mornings for your mom.
Sunday mornings for my
Going
mom.
get ready for church.
Yeah. Give me this, give me that, give me this, give me that. And she'd always be late for church. We used to go with my dad.
How about when Lillian burnt the spaghetti?
No, I burnt the rice pudding.
You burnt that?
And I had to eat the whole pot.
Oh gosh.
And you would think I would hate rice pudding, but I love it. I still like it. That's enough. I can't sit here.
My mom and dad.
My mom and dad. Let's see.